That's me.
That's cool. So we're talking about with people who do stuff, who know all sorts of clever things and are experts in their field, and we chose you to talk about clinical psychology. So what is it?
So, clinical psychology, there's all sorts of different types of psychology, but clinical psychology, like more broadly, psychology is about, I guess, human mind and behavior stuff. So, clinical psychology, particularly, we work with like diagnosing mental health issues. Um, that's probably the psychologist that you think of when you think of sitting down to do therapy with.
Right. So clinical psychologists generally are the people you go and seek for help and things like that.
Generally,
Ah,
yeah.
cool.
There's other types, like there's ones that do neuropsychology, so more to do with the brain. Community psychology, who are more out there in the community. Counseling psychology, who's more a hybrid between counseling and psychology. And it's psychs as well, educational psychs who go out into our schools and work with our tamariki in schools.
Right, cool. So now, what is it you do in your practice work?
I do a few different things. So I do some day-to-day frontline work for oranga tamariki. And in that mahi, I'm often working with whānau, so parents and children who have been through, been through oranga tamariki, but reconnecting. So I often do something called parent-child interaction therapy. So that is, I'm behind a screen and I've got, mum or dad and their tamaiti in the room.
Right.
I'm not in the room, I'm behind the screen and I'm doing what one of my mentors refers to as parent whispering. So I'm coaching how to relate to their children and also help with their behaviours in that too.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
One of the questions I've got about psychology is the whole thing about how much of behavior is nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture. Yeah, that's been a debate for quite some time. I think most psychologists in New Zealand go a lot over the nurture, but there is a role for nature as well. There's some evidence for nature, but we often can't, find a gene for a particular problem.
Right.
We just notice sometimes that it might run in families, but often people come to a conclusion of it's kind of both.
Right.
You might have a vulnerability that runs in your whānau, but it might take a stressful experience to kind of bring that out.
Right.
If you grow up and don't have that stressful experience, then you may not be affected by that vulnerability because of the nature that you've had.
Right.
Nurture,
So that
yeah.
would be in cases like schizophrenia and things like that? Is that the sort of...
Yes.
Yeah.
Schizophrenia is one that they think has quite a genetic link.
Right.
They've found, I don't think a particular gene for it, but that there is quite a high generic heritability that's passed down through families.
Right.
But they also think the same of that too, and they call it a stress diathesis model, where you might have that running down your family line, but it can take some trauma or traumatic experience to bring that out, and often also doesn't come out until adolescence or early adulthood.
Cool. So I've got lots of questions.
Sure.
But I'm just trying to get to the next one. I'm not sure how I can. So things like how does things like drug use contribute to these kinds of issues?
Yeah, there are psychologists working in drug use, like whether that's alcohol or substances as well. It's not my area, but I think the general psychology understanding of it is that it's a health issue, right? It's not just somebody decides, oh, I'm going to do that.
Yep.
It's usually there's something kind of missing, or someone's going through something very painful, and the using the drugs is to kind of numb that experience or to get through that experience. It's kind of sought out to as a last resort thing to resolve, the mumai that person is feeling,
yeah.
and then becomes an addiction because it becomes something that's the only way they can cope with this, the mumai that they're carrying with them. So it then becomes, well, to get past that, what do you need to build up that's good so that you don't need to use that substance?
Right.
And so, yeah, that's how, not my particular field, but I have some colleagues who have worked in, AOD, and it's a tough field, but yeah, there's a good role for that because almost everyone, even anecdotally, who I've met who struggles with addiction, there's something missing for them, in their heart.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. So in your field of study, what are the biggest issues at the moment?
So when I studied, I was looking at, so I did a thesis as well, and I interviewed Māori women who had had some experiences using mental health services. And in that, I think still some of the things that come out of that are the things that are big today. That's that we don't have enough Māori in the workforce to meet the need of our people out there. That's slowly catching up. So I think when I went through university, there was just me in a class of 11. I rejoined another class later and there was another couple of people, so that was good. I'm now supervising students coming through. We're in a class of 14 or 15. They've got at least half Māori students, so that's going to have an effect, but that won't be down the line. And it's access to services for our people, getting our people trained up, whether that's in clinical psychology or community psychology, or there's even talk about, I can't remember the exact name that they've got it, but there's a collective of Māori psychologists called He Paiaka Totara, and there's been some talk of having a particular practitioner that is like, I guess, a combination of te ao Māori and psychology for that sort of practitioner, but maybe doesn't have to go through the full doctoral process as clinical psychology, because it's quite a big piece of work to get qualified. So the biggest things, is the workforce issues for me, because there's not a lot of us, and a lot of people are going out to the private mahi, and everything's just kind of there's just not enough of us out there, and the need is huge.
Okay, cool. So for people who are looking to get some help, what would be your advice? Because it's sometimes a scary, speaking personally, it was quite a scary thing to go and find someone to talk to. So what would be your advice if you were saying, if you feel like you need some help, what would you do?
Yeah, kind of depends who your support networks are. I always reckon if you've got a GP that you're connected with, they're a really good first point of call for getting some help, because they can refer you out. And often through your GP, you can get like 6 free sessions with somebody.
Right.
Sometimes it's also offered through workplaces as well. So that's a good avenue for a first port of call. And so I would say also reach out early, because the waiting lists are massive at the moment. So if you wait until like you just can't bear it any longer, you're probably going to have to sit with it for a bit longer.
Right.
If you're really in the crisis, you can reach out to like each, they're not DHBs now, it's all te whatu ora, I guess, but they were separate DHBs, but they've all got crisis services. So if you're really in a crisis, you're going out to that. But in terms of getting that long term, to see a psychologist, it's quite difficult at the moment, but it's just reaching out and having some support around you as well that's going to keep you going in the meantime. Yeah.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with some good people is always helpful. Yeah, and I think you're at the point about having a good support network. In my case, I was lucky. I had a sister who was a trained counsellor, and I said to her, I need someone to talk to because I know it can't be you. Can you find someone? So that happened pretty quickly in my case, and I was lucky. But I know that
Yeah, that
doesn't
is.
happen a lot. But if you can find people in your whānau or people that know people, I think
Yeah.
that's an
I
important.
think even if you've got people in your whānau who have their expertise or in that area, then they can help you navigate to get that, even if they can't sort of get you into, or, know someone who's got availability, they can help you kind of, even just how to phrase it to your GP
Right.
to say that you need help, because sometimes even just finding the words is hard. And it can take a lot to kind of step out there and ask for it. And also think, like, don't be afraid to bring someone with you as well. If you've got a good support person, you don't have to go alone to the GP. You don't even have to go alone to the psychologist. Like, I often get people come, they're like, oh, can I bring my sister? And I'm like, yep, just bring them along. You might not want them there for the whole thing, but bring them along for the first one, and we can talk about what it's going to look like in that. Because sometimes you won't want your sister there for the whole thing. But, just in that initial, when you're just getting to know somebody, it can be really helpful.
Yeah. Awesome.